Roll call.
All right, give me a second here to collect myself. Sorry, I was in a sidebar conference.
That's
What
okay.
bar was he in?
Corner bar.
You're on a roll, Steve, on a roll.
All right. Chisel,
Here.
Neal,
Here.
Carlson,
Here.
Luce,
Present?
Zittergrun,
Here.
Hadley,
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Okay, is there any public comment to come before the council on any topic that's not on the agenda?
Mayor, there is one person here that does wish to address the council. Jim Morrow is here, and he'll advance to the podium and say a comment.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the chance to talk to you a minute.
Hey,
Supper's
Jim, can you state your name and your address, please?
Oh, yeah, Jim Morrow, and I live at
Thank you.
1406 Jordan Drive.
Thank you.
So supper's on, my wife says, so I just have a minute and I'll get out of here, but I wanted to, as a citizen that lives on the north side of Decorah, I wanted to come and thank you guys publicly for Locust Road. It is such an improvement, and everybody up there has been talking about how happy we were that this got done. And I know you guys have a lot of work on such projects and a lot of discussion and heartache and messing around, but the result is really worth it. My only problem is it's going to be tough, and where's the chief? I have trouble keeping my speed down now, but other than that, it is absolutely fantastic. So I don't know if you guys have had much public input back, but really appreciate it, and just thank you very much. That's all I needed to say.
Well, Jim, I really appreciate you coming down to City Hall and taking the time prior to your supper to pass on your feelings about that. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
it was really needed, and the result's fantastic, so thanks.
That's
Thanks so much, Jim. That's lovely.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, consent agenda.
All right, the consent agenda consists of the minutes of the December 21, 2020 regular meeting, claims, Resolution 3150, setting a public hearing on the maximum benefit levy for fiscal 22, February 1st, 2021 at 5:45 p.m. Resolution 3151, resetting a public hearing on zoning code amendments, Chapter 17.140 floodplain management ordinance and 17.120 F1 floodplain district in the city of Decorah for February 1st, 2021 at 5:45 p.m. And appointment of Mike Ashbacker as fire chief, Jeff Clement as first assistant chief, and Lee Bierke as second assistant chief per city code section 2.14.020. Just a note for the council, resolution 3151, resetting a public hearing. I missed a publication deadline to get that ordinance published, the notice of the public hearing published, and so I need to have the council reset that for the date specified.
This is Luce. I'd move the consent agenda.
Zittergrun, second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Zittergrun,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Carlson.
Aye.
Consider approval of council rules of procedure. Can I get some background on that, Chad?
So as is usual and customary, staff does, in conjunction with the mayor, put this on the council agenda on or about the first meeting of each year for the council to consider any changes to their rules and procedures manual. There was some conversation in the last meeting or two about minutes. I did provide a little background, or at least maybe my opinion on some thoughts on that or recommendation. I would ask the council to review your rules of procedure for the coming year. If there are no changes, you can simply state that and let them ride. If there are changes, I would ask that you to make those changes and approve a new document moving forward. Regarding the minutes, I did write a little background there. I guess my recommendation is that you let the city clerk do what she does in terms of recording the minutes, with the notation that any documents, letters, or information that's received, that be reflected as received and on file in the clerk's office.
This is Luce. I'd recommend that any letter or such come in, there be a paragraph talking about what you said, Chad, under the comments from the public part of conducting the meeting. That there's 3 parts there, and the 4th one be any letters or stuff asked to be entered into the public record would be as your paragraph stated.
What do we do with the letters we receive via email and such? So when we get other letters, how do they get connected to the same meeting that a letter is read at during?
So, this is Chad. I think I'll make a comment, and then I would ask Wanda to maybe go further, because maybe I don't see everything. But the things that are communicated with me, with the city manager directly, I will put those in your Dropbox or send them to the council and the mayor directly. I think in the case of this particular instance, it was directed that a letter was sent to me and it said, read this at the meeting and enter it in the record, right? So that's an explicit instruction. While it's an explicit instruction, I think it's still maybe vague. I mean, anything that's sent to City Hall or, to any of you folks really is a public record. So in that sense, maybe it's already entered into the public record. But I think when somebody explicitly says, read this and enter it, that maybe that takes a different step, which is what we've done. Otherwise, it probably just ends up in the Dropbox or your background notes with just a short reference by me to you that it's there.
Well, and doesn't most, I know, in reference to Steve's comment about doing them during the public comment, sometimes they are related to the issues that we're talking about, where it would be pertinent to have input, especially we ask for that when we're discussing and making comments at the time that that issue is gone over by the council.
Yeah, we won't.
But do we?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
We really don't, because it's a public meeting, but it's not a public hearing. So most of the time, we don't have comments from the public on items on the agenda, right?
well, there's times when if you're voting on something that, whether it's contentious or there's been quite a bit of input, there's council members that ask, Chad, have you received any comments on this item?
But they don't get read out loud.
Only if the person submitted it asks to have it read out loud.
That's what I'm trying to say as part of the policy of making comments from the public, that any letter sent to the city manager or city ask can be read to the council will be noted and recorded and put in the Dropbox.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not comfortable right now keeping our rules of procedures as they are without a much more clear protocol for how we read in letters, how we handle letters that are read to us, and how we record what is said at a meeting during a public hearing. I think Ross made a really good point last month that has plagued me for the last year, that it's much like reading a newspaper article, in that there is too much discretion as to what is said and what is not in the minutes. So I think you either get what happens is when you read our minutes, you get a perspective that it's not without bias. And I'm not saying that Wanda or anyone doing minutes has any other bias, anyone writing minutes has bias. Like, that's just the way it is. And I feel like if we had a more outlined protocol of, if we get a letter and we don't actually have a public hearing at that time, it's read during the comment section, not during the section when we're actually discussing the item. That would alleviate sort of any one letter having more minute time on a particular topic, right? I mean, I don't know what they would be, but I would like to see something in our rules and procedures that outlines how we handle letters.
But then, Emily, this is Chad. How do you balance that with, the mayor has the discretion to allow anybody to speak on a particular matter that's on the agenda, but it's not a public hearing. And when that person, when she opens that up and then a person speaks, another person may simply submit a letter and say this.
Does that happen, Mayor? Do you know ahead of time if you're going to do that, or do you sometimes while we're talking decide that?
Most of the time, by the time the meeting, prior to the meeting starts, we know if there's comments pertaining to a particular issue. Now, we may not, I was thinking in relation to the public comment section, according to what Steve was talking about, but usually we know enough ahead of time that we can make sure that their comments are read.
So I'm wondering if because I wonder about people who don't show up because there isn't a public hearing, so they don't come and say a comment because they don't think they're going to have the chance to talk. And again, how do we make this more streamlined and fair and transparent about what we're allowing and what we're not allowing?
Well, and the part of I think your comment on transparency is true, whether we allow, whenever anybody has a comment, to be able to have it read accordingly, whether they want it, or if they, just so that it's noted when we're having the discussion. I get I think one thing to be careful about is not allowing, well, you are allowing people to comment. It sounds like you would rather have it during the public comment versus when we are having the discussion. Either way, they would be entered into the minutes of the meeting.
Right, but I'm also wondering about what if we just had a standard procedure where during the comment section, Chad lets us know of any of the letters that were received this week. We got a letter on this issue, this is like, so it just was standard fare that every meeting we opened up with what we got letters about this week. In the public, because those are the public comments we've gotten at that point, and then it doesn't give any one more weight to a public comment than another. And they don't have to, unless a person asks to be read. I'm not suggesting we read all the comments. But if we're saying that a person who sends us an email, who has the intent that it's entering into the public record because they're sending us an email, we shouldn't give them any less transparency to what was said than someone who says, read this at the meeting, because I think both people believe that their information is getting put into public record. That make sense?
Yeah, it does. I guess for me, as I hear it, is whether it's a letter, if it's more pertinent to have it when you're having the discussion on the agenda, or if it's just a general comment that really isn't related to any of the items on the agenda, then I would see those going in the public comment, just a general comment going there. But anything that's related to a specific agenda item, I would feel the value would be more, during the time that we're discussing that item.
So then I would recommend that whenever we're going to allow public comment, we need to make sure that it's that it's known on the agenda that we're going to allow public comment for that point. So then everyone knows that they can show up. We don't just allow the public comment because someone wrote a letter that wants to be read at that point.
No, I don't think so, but I would, it seems to me that it's been the practice that we do allow public, well, not always when we're having a discussion. Is that where you're talking about that's where differences that we're.
Yeah, so
Equity- equity.
let's say someone wanted to make a public comment about this discussion, right?
Right.
And they had sent Chad a letter that said, I want you to read this into the record when they have this discussion, but we're not opening it up for anybody else to talk. That seems unfair to me.
I'm beginning to get a better grasp at what you're getting across.
Yeah.
I think if someone sends us something to be read into the record, I think we have an obligation to do that. And anything less than that is less than transparent. And I know that it can be cumbersome, it can take a long time, but we have time. And if people want something read into the record, I think that's important. Because what they're asking for is not just the letter be in the, the recorded meeting, but also the impact of that letter at that time is felt by the people in the room and the public who are watching, particularly in this time when we're in COVID and so many people are not able to or willing to come to a public meeting. I just don't think it's that big of a deal to make a fuss about. And I think that if someone requests a letter read into the record, we read it, period. And
Kirk, do you feel that it should be done at the time of the discussion of the item, or that the suggestion of having all the letters or whatever read during the public comment portion of the meeting?
Either way.
So I agree so I want to be very clear. I agree with that too, Kirk. I just think they should be read in the public comment section to keep everything uniform. Sorry, I hope that's clear, that I don't think we shouldn't read letters. I just think we should do them consistently in the same place.
Maybe for parity's sake, that wouldn't be a bad idea to include in our rules.
This is Wanda, and
Yeah.
I just want to make a comment here. Whatever this council decides, obviously as your city clerk, I will do as long as it's legal and ethical under Iowa law. But I do take issue with the implication that my minutes are biased. I have been doing minutes for 30 plus years, and never once has a council complained about my minutes. I try to put in anything that I think is relevant and prudent to the discussion, and when somebody asks that their letter be read into the record, I think your public information office at the state might take issue with that information being suppressed. I just feel like I've been doing my job as best I can, and I can assure you there's been lots of decisions that councils have made over the years that I don't necessarily agree with, but it's my job to support the council in whatever they do.
Wanda, I want to apologize if that's what you heard from me. I was suggesting that anyone taking minutes, the nature of taking minutes is a biased process, not because of good or bad or ugly, but because nobody taking minutes can write down everything. So by nature, taking minutes is a biased process. It is nothing to do with you. So I want to reiterate, and I apologize if that's what you heard. I'm just saying minutes themselves are that. So anything that we can do to help alleviate that would be helpful. Recognizing that Ross had brought up the problem is that if we're not recording a conversation, it's just an unbalanced look when you read the minutes. But please, it was nothing more than I would take minutes and they would be biased, and the process of taking minutes is a biased act.
Well, it sounds to me like what we've discussed is just the position of where those letters are read. The recording, whoever is doing the recording, they would be put into the minutes as well, just like it has been in the past.
And this is Ross. And
Yeah.
if we were discussing something and you were to open it up to public comment, Jim Morrow, for example, is Jim Morrow's expression of gratitude going to be recorded verbatim into our minutes? Wanda?
I did not write it down verbatim, but it would definitely be recorded that he was here to thank the council for their work on Locust Road.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But if someone were to write a letter and say, I want it read into the record, it would be recorded verbatim, or that's been my recent past experience. And my point is that what I say is not recorded verbatim into the minutes. Jim Morrow's comments aren't recorded verbatim into the minutes. Someone attending the meeting and saying, this is Cosmo Kramer living at 302 Ridge Road isn't going to be recorded into the minutes. It's inequitable. And I don't think that I don't think just referencing something and having the council be aware of it is suppression of information. I believe it's equity. And so that's why I feel it's potentially disingenuous.
That's why I tried to suggest for the start of the conversation to follow the city manager's recommendation that items and letters submitted to the city or the city council, once submitted, become a public document, be acknowledged and recorded as received and on file in the city clerk's office, but not reiterated or copied verbatim into the meeting minutes.
Okay, to be clear, the letters weren't totally verbatim, but there was a lot of points in each letter. And it's very easy when you have a document in front of you to take it more verbatim than it is when it's not. When it's just a comment that you're writing as I'm taking notes here. During public meetings, public hearings, there have been many times during controversial issues that I have gone back to the recording so that I could capture exactly what was said by different people, because there were so many points that they were trying to make that it's very difficult to write that quickly, because I'm not a transcriptionist and I don't have the equipment to be a transcriptionist.
That's why I think our minutes in general should just be briefer. Like I would say, Neil comment, blank commented, letter read. I mean, and then have the reference to the video for anyone who actually wants to watch it. I mean, that I think in some ways, Wanda, I think it's just easier if we can make your job easier by having less detail and pull people into actually watching the video as opposed to trying to garnish information about our meetings from minutes.
Emily,
because you're not a transcriptionist.
This is Chad. First of all, the recordings are not a legal document. Mm-hmm. We've been doing it because of the cable access channel, and now we're doing it because of Zoom. But those platforms change over time. Next year it might be, Zoom plus 2, and it's totally different. You can't see the Zoom recordings. But the fact of the matter is those aren't a legal document. The minutes withstand the test of time. Obviously, we have minutes in the vault that go back to the very first meeting of the city in 1849. Those are preserved for historical and posterity, right, forever and ever. So that's where, the issue needs to remain, is in the minute document.
Well, and then plus, quite oftentimes I do keep paper copies for a certain length of time, but I can't always refer. But it's very easy to go back if I'm looking at the minutes and say, okay, who said that and what. So they are referenced for going back to have some kind of an indication of trying to track the way things were written down. I think also the fact that there are people that don't have access to recordings. They can always come to City Hall and get them. But there is a certain amount of recording in minutes that I think is needed for reflection of discussion in a meeting, just versus outlining form.
I hear that. So then in light of that, I guess I would go back to what Ross is saying, which is then we need more. Then it seems that if we've got a public comment, but we're not then commenting, we're not then filling the minutes with what council members are saying, then that's problematic too in my mind. But I don't know the answer, but.
Okay. Well, the one thing is to try, for consistency's sake, work with having any letters that are presented to the council done during the public comment portion.
The way I read the recommendation as it was given to us is that if a letter or item comes in, that it would be acknowledged. John Snow sent a letter supporting the idea of, or against the idea of, and we have received that, and it's on file in the city clerk's office.
Okay. And that was the recommendation. That was as Chad has recommended it,
Correct.
correct?
It does seem that this is Steve Zittergren. It does seem that we're talking about a couple different things here, right? I mean, first is the placement of where these things go, and it seems like there's wide consensus that public comment is the appropriate time for public comment, barring certain exceptions. I mean, it seems like the second issue is do we read the letters verbatim at the council meetings or not? And I mean, my personal take on it is it hasn't seemed to hinder council business or the work of the city that much yet. If it became a problem, if someone decided that they could basically effectively filibuster us or, you know, make us sit here all night reading their ramblings about city business, then maybe we could reconsider it. I think, I'm not giving anyone out there ideas, please. But I think that, yeah, I think that for now, you know, I don't mind listening to people's public comments, and I want to hear them, and I want to hear their letters read for now. And that doesn't seem like it's a problem. I don't know why we're trying to work out a solution. And it seems like the third issue is how Wanda can most effectively do her important, I wouldn't say, you know, I would say it's the work of editorialization, right? She's trying to boil this down so that the minutes are a useful document for people. And I think I'm with Ross and Emily in wanting her to apply her same careful editorial work to the letters that are read verbatim, as she does to other communications the council receives from the public, and that she applies to the statements that we make. She can do that work with the letters we receive too. And it, you know, it creates a set of minutes that are, I think, more useful and more equitable. So that's kind of where I'm at on those three different issues.
So then, in relation to the rules of procedure then, perhaps it's writing something up as far as the location as to where letters are going to be read in the meeting, that they would be read during a public comment.
Well, if
I think you're missing the point of the recommendation, is the letters not be verbatim discussed again or reiterated in the meeting minutes. And I think they just recognize that the person spoke in favor of this issue, and we've received that letter and it's on record.
I don't think anybody is arguing that we shouldn't read the letters, to be very clear. Everyone wants to read the letters out loud. I haven't heard a single person say.
I've said it 6 times. I don't want the letter reread. I'm sorry, you're not hearing me.
Oh, you don't want them actually read out loud in the meeting?
That's what the recommendation says.
Well,
I'm accepting the recommendation as worthwhile.
I don't accept that, because I think people should be able to know that if they send a letter and they recommend and they request that it be read, that they should be read. So it's a matter of working with
Mayor,
adjusting the recommendation.
and Mayor, I would also not do them at public comment if they are referring to, like we got a public hearing on item 10. That's what, if they got a letter sent to us on that, that's the appropriate time to put that in there during the public hearing, along with anybody that wants to get up and speak on that public hearing.
I agree with you, Randy, but what if it's not a public hearing?
That's we've said that,
Well,
yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that too.
Then are you going, if you're going to take letters, whether, or then are you going to let people stand up and talk on it, which we have done. People that have questioned it or anything else, we let them stand up and talk. Then you got to let the letters be read in too, because not everybody can be here at all times.
And there has been instances where I have referred to the council and said, do you want to hear what this person has to say, when and it isn't a public hearing. And depending, usually one of the council people say, yes, I'd like to hear what they say.
And I don't disagree.
Mayor, you have done it, Mayor Arndt has done it. So it's not anything precedent setting since you've been elected, but it has been a common practice that when we have a non-public hearing on an issue that can be talked about, people will come to the meetings and we do allow them to speak. So I think letters at that time should be read into the public record, if that's what the letter writer wants us to do.
As long as I can say, my name is Joe Schmo and I'd like my comments to be put into the public record, and I'm physically present, then it's equitable, right?
Well,
But again, not copied verbatim into the minutes. Right? That's what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
those
Not
comments, anyone who comes here and speaks to the council, it's noted that they were here.
Yep.
No, it's probably not put in verbatim. People talk so fast, I cannot possibly write that fast, but I get the essence of what they're saying.
Then for
Like
equity,
I said,
we,
the letters were much easier to just, there were so many points in them, it was much easier to just write them in there.
sure.
And I had the copy right in front of me.
But for equity, supporting Steve and Chad, it could just be referenced that such and such person submitted a letter and it was read. But it's not printed in our legal note, in our word for word, 31 cents or whatever it is per word legal document.
I think that's wrong then. If you're gonna let people speak, you should let people write.
No, that's what I'm saying. I agree with you. It should be equitable, but you're not entering things into the record. If you're not entering it verbally, you shouldn't do it written. There should be an equity.
So here's what I'm hearing. Correct me if I'm wrong. We should, and this is not, Steve doesn't agree with this, but we should read the letters and offer up anybody who wants to speak comment. But neither the letter nor verbal comments get written verbatim into our minutes. The process of submitting something into the record is actually just giving it to council and putting it in our Dropbox. That's what it means to be submitted to the record. But we want to hear from our constituents and people, so we want things that people want to be read at meetings will be read at meetings. Is that a fair assessment?
For example, I went back and read old minutes today. Kirk, Mayor Pro Tem, in 1997. I was looking at Walmart and the trails in the parking lot and the color of Walmart and all that. And I was reading back through the minutes. And there were not 17 letters that were read and put into the minutes verbatim. There were indications that there were letters both in support and against Walmart, but had they been written into the record, that would have been 3 pages of newspaper, right? That's my point. Is equitable disinformation of information legally?
well, I think for figuring out some adjustment to the statement as far as in the rules of procedure, we may need to take a closer look and bring something back. Do some
Well-
more discussing on it and bring something back.
Mayor, this is Chad.
Right.
Again, my recommendation was that I didn't feel this needed to be something written out
Yeah.
in the rules, just because I think there are so many maybe unintended scenarios or unthought of scenarios where these things happen, where documents are submitted or letters are sent. Maybe whether something's on the agenda with a public hearing or something's on the agenda without a public hearing. And to me, it seems like really the essence of the discussion is whether a letter is copied verbatim in and verbal comments are not recorded verbatim. That seems to kind of be the issue. I think Wanda indicated that the letter wasn't in reference, this specific letter was not recorded verbatim. But I think if the council's desire is that the essence of presented documents are recorded and the essence of verbal comments that are made are recorded, you just need to tell her that, and that's enough. I don't know that it needs to be memorialized in your rules of procedures, because I think we're not going to get it right. There are too many scenarios that could come up.
Well, and definitely being sensitive in reflection of the discussion that we've had, that things are equitable no matter which way that they're presented.
If we're done with that particular section, I have another comment on the rules of procedure. Or is there something else that someone wants to say about that? Okay, so my thought, I'm not sure if maybe this doesn't require amending our rules of procedure or whatever, but I think it's been valuable for the city to, in the wake of COVID, for all of its public meetings to be publicly available via a streaming site. And I'm curious, would we need to amend our rules of procedure to make that official policy going forward? I think it's been good for open access for people. I think it's often a lot easier for people to listen to a meeting than to show up. So do we need to amend our procedure for that, or can we just commit to it going forward, or what?
Could you explain that just a little bit more? I'm not sure I grasp what you're.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor.
That's
I guess
okay. That's all right.
I guess what I'm saying is that I think I know that the council meeting has been live streamed in the past.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, even committee meetings of the council and different commissions in town, I think that it's been very valuable to people for those to be available on the internet. And I'd like to see it continue to be policy after COVID is no longer a presenting problem.
So where it would be stated that you could, that anybody would be able to find the recording of the city council on YouTube at a certain date, or recording through the local access station.
Yeah, and again, I don't even know if now is the right time for that. I'm just expressing a desire that this open access that COVID has made necessary continue to be possible in a post-COVID world. It's been great for me as a council member. It's made me more effective because there's been so many times I could listen to a meeting that I couldn't be present for physically. I'd like to see that. And it's not just good for people in the city government. I think it's good in general for the city.
No taken.
I agree with that.
Any other comments on other portions?
Only that it's funny to think about a year ago, we were talking about whether or not we should allow video conferencing into our meetings.
Well, it hasn't been very long ago since we didn't involve any connections. So I guess pandemic certainly took care of that whole discussion. So, okay, anything else on the rules of procedures? Hearing none, let's go on to the agenda. Public hearing on zoning code amendments, chapter 17, zoning related to storage containers in the city of Decorah, January 4th. Oh yeah, okay. Can you give some background on this public hearing, please?
This is a public hearing regarding changes and amendments to chapter 17, zoning related to storage containers in the city. This is an item that came up to both the Board of Adjustment and the Planning and Zoning Commission sometime early last summer, I think, in regards to a property owner wanting to use a storage or shipping container as an accessory structure, or a shed, if you will, in the rear yard. Without rules, basically zoning code otherwise is silent on the matter. The Board of Adjustment provided a variance based on setback, and we otherwise had to permit it as an accessory structure, which we did. But we engaged in conversation with the Board of Adjustment and the Planning and Zoning Commission about whether those were the types of structures we wanted to see, at least in our residentially zoned areas. And ultimately, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed several sample ordinances from other cities. I think they looked at Knoxville and maybe Ames or Ankeny as some examples, and came up with the code section that you see in front of you as the Zoning Commission's recommendation that storage or shipping containers not be allowed as accessory structures except in temporary and permitted situations. So, for example, if somebody's moving, obviously, they would be allowed under a permit to place a storage or shipping container on their property for the purposes of collecting their items to facilitate the move, or during construction or remodeling as some type of construction or storage shed on a temporary basis. But that storage units or shipping containers, as defined, would not be allowed on a permanent basis. There are some provisions in the ordinance for exceptions in commercial and industrial districts as well, for like-minded type things. But the essence of it is to exclude them or prohibit them in residential zoning districts.
Now, shipping containers have been a real popular mode of making tiny homes and smaller homes. Sometimes they'll attach 2 or 3 or 4 of them together and make, even a two-story home. What do we do, if someone wants to reutilize those containers for such purpose?
Yeah, well, good question, and we discussed that too. Right now, the prohibition is on accessory structures, right? So if somebody wanted to make one into a house, we're looking at adopting some building codes here in the next few months. I think it's a different conversation if it becomes a permanent residence or principal structure. And unless you want to outlaw that type of construction for principal structure, if it would meet the regulations of, and again, a future building code, right now we don't have, but if somebody wanted to do one today, I don't know that we could prohibit it as long as it met other zoning regulations for setback and that. But, just looking at the future, because the future's gonna jump at us pretty quick in terms of adopting building codes. Do they meet the structural integrity implied in the codes, wind and snow loads and those types of things? Obviously they do in other locales because it is a popular trend to stack these things up, put some siding on them, put a door in the front and a sliding glass door in the back, etc. So I guess I say all that to say this code really contemplates accessory structures or shed type situations.
I'm gonna open the public hearing. Is there anybody at City Hall or on Zoom that wishes to speak to this code change? I don't see anybody saying anything on Zoom. Anything at City Hall there?
There's no one here to speak to this issue.
Okay. In that case, then I'll close the public hearing and go on to consider ordinance 1262, amending chapters 17.68, 17.72, 17.76 zoning code, residential definitions, dwellings, room houses, boarding houses in the city. You know what? I'm on the wrong one. Sorry about that. Consider ordinance 1261, amending chapter 17 zoning related to storage containers in the city of Decorah.
I've got two, this is Steve Zittergren. I've got sort of two related questions. First, Chad, you mentioned a permitting process, and I'm curious, to what extent would you require permitting for super temporary use of these and moving, because it seems like that comes up all the time, and I hate to introduce more complexity into the lives of people who are moving. And second, if it's not necessary. And second, I'm curious about enforcement. The ordinance mentions being in violation of municipal policy, and I'm just curious what's the mechanism for responding to people who are in violation?
So it is a municipal code infraction, if that, if it would get that far. A lot of times, though, we write a letter, we make a phone call, and we achieve compliance relatively easily that way without having to go with the municipal infraction element. The municipal infraction element is pretty serious. Right off the top of my head, it might be $250 per incident. But again, we rarely get to that point that we're not able to achieve compliance by a phone call or a visit or a follow-up letter or something like that. Permit is required. Let's see, I just had that section here. The temporary placement of shipping containers on residentially zoned properties or on properties the primary use of which are residential for the limited purposes of loading and unloading household contents shall be permitted for a period of time not exceeding 180 days in any one calendar. So even if somebody had it there for a month or a few weeks or something like that, we would require a permit.
I might be alone in this concern. I'm wondering if anyone else on the council is feeling like going through the hassle of acquiring a permit to park a truck outside your house and those storage container moving companies where they just drop a storage container on your lawn, you fill it up and they take it away in 3 days. I feel like we should have a different policy we shouldn't make people jump through a permitting process for something that is literally a matter of days. Obviously, if it extends into more than a week or something, maybe that should fall under a different umbrella. Is there anyone else in the council who feels this way? I might be alone.
I thought those were exempted by the way it was written.
I did too. Do they? So if my question to you, Chad, is if what Steve is suggesting, do they have to get a permit if it's a moving company that's bringing it there for a very temporary time?
Yeah, so Section 30, exception, portable moving containers or moving pods placed on private property no more than 30 days shall not be regulated by this chapter. I just wonder now if I'm looking at this.
All right, maybe my eyes were glazing over by the time I got there. I'm sorry.
No, I do agree with you, Steve. I was under the impression that a person could do that. So. Did we get any letters from anyone? I just quickly did image searching on, and I'm like, well, they're kind of cool to some degree. So did we get any letters from people about this at all? Did planning and zoning, or did we from anybody?
The council has not. At the time we were discussing this at both Board of Adjustment and Planning and Zoning, we did. There were a couple of comments from, I think, we have one right now that kind of started this conversation, and there were some adjoining neighbors or residents in the area that were opposed to allowing this type of accessory structure in the rear yard.
I guess I don't have an issue with it as long as they're structurally sound, and I think the practice is good because you're repurposing something and you're giving it second life, and I think as long as it's a solid structure, I don't see the harm in using these.
I think in a residential area, putting a pod in a backyard for storage is ugly as can be. And I don't think it does anything to uplift the property values of the whole area. I think it starts to look like industrial zone. So I would speak against it.
I guess I would like to see it addressed with building code as well. Because they can be done well. But I do think under B2, that it isn't just shipping containers, truck vans, converted mobile homes, trailers. I think the concept was to avoid junk, and I think the basis for what is being put forth is solid. But I do believe that there are things that where they could be used beneficially, and I don't see that addressed. So I'd like to make sure we do that with code too.
Thus far, we have not had any motions or seconds.
Well, so I need some clarification from Ross. When you say addressed to code, you're talking building code?
Yes. So if and when we do adopt a building code, and I know that the council has said that that's a council priority, I just want to make sure that accessory dwelling units or commercial structures that would potentially meet building code and be built out of a freight container would not be exempted by this.
Well, again, I'm going to assert, and I can certainly double check here, but I'm going to assert that this is in reference to accessory structures only. In other words, not structures intended for habitat.
So as a resident who had a semi-trailer parked in the side yard of a neighbor across from me for over a year and a half, I think this is an important ordinance to pass. And so, Mayor, I would move 1261.
Moved by Luce,
I'll second.
second by Randy. Discussion.
Just for my own verification, this is for residential areas only, correct?
Correct.
Except where it says industrial and commercial on B and C, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it does provide some regulations for industrial and commercial, so, they just can't just show up unpermitted and that kind of thing. It does provide
Right, permit for that.
it
I'm
does
just
provide a
thinking of
stopgap for commercial and industrial.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the cool, innovative little shops that are made out of them, but I think we addressed that.
Any further discussion? Comments? Roll call?
Luce,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Zittergrun,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Carlson,
No.
Neal.
No.
It passed with 2 noes. Is there any consideration for waiving anything beyond what we talked about tonight?
With the 2 no's, I'm not sure we can we, John?
Nope, that
But
might
it
be.
passes.
This is one I think we should wait and see if we get. some
No, we
feedback
wouldn't
from
have,
the
we
public.
need, we wouldn't have enough to get
Okay.
past the requirement.
Okay.
Thank you,
That'll be, thanks, John. That'll be coming back then. Okay, public hearing on zoning code amendments, chapter. Where are we here?
Chapter
Number 8.
17.68,
There
17.72,
you
and
go.
17.76 zoning code, residential definitions, dwellings, rooming houses, and boarding houses.
Perfect, thank you.
Just to open this one up, this is kind of a cleanup review of R1, R2, and R3 residential zoning in response to last summer's approval of the short-term rental codes, and just trying to tighten up some language in R1, R2, and R3 to be more consistent with language in the short-term rental code section that was approved, with the exception of also taking a look at section K in 16.6820 and 7220 and 7620 in regards to item K says agriculture and the usual agricultural buildings and structures, including raising of livestock, poultry, and grain storage, etc. That section was a permitted use in all residential districts, and the Planning and Zoning Commission is recommending striking any reference to agricultural practices in a residential zoning district. And just to be clear, because sometimes it can be confusing, that doesn't prohibit ag uses in ag zone districts, of which we have several in the city. It would prohibit, if approved, ag uses as listed in residential districts. This came up during the Great Rooster debate a while ago as well, so it cleans that up.
Is there anybody who wishes to speak to this item, either via Zoom or from City Hall? I don't see anybody from Zoom. I'm assuming nobody from City Hall.
There's no one here to speak on this matter.
Okay, I will close the public hearing.
Luce would move ordinance 1262.
Yes. This is considering ordinance 1262.
Luce would move it.
Luce,
I'll second.
Neil seconds. Discussion?
I think it's a good updating of language.
Any other discussion? Roll call?
Luce,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Zittergrun,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Luce would move waiving the second and third reading and adopt.
I'll second.
Move to adopt, waive and adopt by Luce and Neil. Discussion?
Just thank you to P&Z and to staff for their work on continuing to keep our ordinances relevant and accurate. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your service. It's thankless, thankless, thankless.
Appreciate that, Wallace.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, roll call?
Luce,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Carlson. I don't understand.
Who do you need?
Carlson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Chisel, Zittergrun.
Aye.
Okay. Motion waived and passed. Public hearing on a purchase and development agreement with 3 Chicks Rental LLC for city land.
Okay, I'll work through the development agreement and the Plata survey. I would ask, because there are still a couple of points on the Plata survey that are not finalized, I would ask the council to hold this public hearing, receive any comments, but continue the public hearing to a later date, and then table action on Resolution 3152, so that we can get the final points of the Plata survey worked out to correct detail. So just a refresher on the topic or the subject matter. This is the development agreement, purchase and development agreement with 3 Chicks Rental LLC for the purchase of the land known as the Fox and Coon Club. And as the council knows, Kelly Batchelder has submitted this on behalf of his LLC for the purchase of this property. It's approximately 4.9 acres. There is a development agreement attached to it that does remunerate the real estate transaction, including considerations for annexation and rezoning, dispensation with the Fox and Coon Club, which we are still working through. And then a timeline for redevelopment of the site to commercial property. And I'm just looking here to just make sure I give you the information on the timeline, and I'm not just seeing that jump out at me here. Within 18 months of the date of conveyance of the real estate, the developer shall submit and obtain approval of a site plan to the city through the normal course and per specifications. The developer agrees to construct the project in accordance with the site plan and substantially complete within 36 months. The developer shall not request from the city TIF or real estate tax abatement. The developer may not sell, and the developer will follow SUDOS or other city codes and ordinances, and I thought there was a provision here on stormwater adherence too, which would be part of the site plan approval processes. So those are the basic tenets of the development agreement. There are a couple of points in the plat, which is in your Dropbox, and I can pull it up if you want to work through it, but and they really pertain to utility easements and use of land along the west and north as far as access, the access road. We're working on the final details of the easement along there, and probably the area that we have the greatest concern with it, just in terms of trying to work out the details, is the utility easement on the south side of the property. But we had several phone calls today. I think we're working through that. Again, we just don't have that done tonight. As you recall, we have a lift station and water and sewer utilities in that area just north of the Ford store, south of this subject property, and we're trying to set up the best use of utility easements along there to preserve those existing utilities and prepare for future. We just don't have that done tonight. So I would take any questions on this. I see Kelly's on. If he has anything he'd like to add, he certainly is welcome to do that. But otherwise, we would ask you to continue the public hearing so we can finalize these details, and then we'd bring it back for action at that time.
Okay, so I'll open the public hearing to comments, either via Zoom or in person at City Hall. Are there any comments? Considerations?
And there's no one here at City Hall to speak to this matter.
I'm not seeing anybody that wishes to speak. So I will close the public hearing.
Actually, Mayor, I'd like to move to continue the public hearing until next time this is ready to bring forth to the council.
Do we want to do that February 1?
Yes.
Steve, would you want to do that February 1st?
That sounds good.
Okay. I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and second to continue the public hearing till February 1st. Any further discussion? Roll call?
Luce?
Aye.
Chisel?
Aye.
Zittergrun?
Aye.
Hadley?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Carlson?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Okay, and then in light of number 11, we'll be bringing back more information on that.
Yeah, John, do you want them to formally table that, or can we just disregard it this time? And
Yeah, you have the option, either it can be a motion to table and a vote on that, or else if nobody makes a motion, it just, nothing happens. And it can be brought back later.
I would move to table it until the February 1st meeting.
Second.
Motion made by Luce, second by Carlson to table until the February 1st meeting. Any discussion?
I think it's timely to keep it in front of us, and it'll keep moving that way if we send it to a certain date.
Okay. Thank you. Roll call?
Luce,
Aye?
Carlson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Zittergren,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Okay, so that'll be coming back at February 1st meeting. Consider ordinance 1264, amending chapter 2.16 and chapter 2.48 of the municipal code of the city of Decorah related to the status of the police chief. First reading.
Okay, so this was first brought up at a public safety meeting back in May. Actually, it was probably, I think, maybe brought up in a meeting, maybe even in January or February, almost a year ago. At the overall recommendation of the consultant that worked through the police chief hiring process, but as discussed at that May 18 committee meeting, the direction then was for the city manager and the police chief to work through some language with the city attorney. And I think we've provided that language in your Dropbox for redefining the relationship between the city manager and the police department and the police chief to more align operations of the police department under the city manager for administrative and operational duties. And that is the intent of the language that we've worked through with Dave and John and myself and present that to you tonight. I would point out, I did neglect to clarify some language that Dave had presented in his recommendations back to me and John regarding city manager duties under 2.48040, item P. His language was, and I quote, "be directly responsible to the city council for the administration of municipal affairs as set forth in this chapter. All departments of the city shall report to and be responsible to the city manager." Dave had stricken some other language, and that language is still shown in the draft ordinance that you have in front of you, beginning with the underlined text. I would just simply add that, you know, it is part of my responsibilities and duties to the city and the city council to review and recommend personnel and city policies from time to time and to implement and adopt such policies. And I do that in a broad sense with my team as the need arises from time to time, affecting either HR, fiscal, or personnel policies. And to me, that's what that middle section in P in the ordinance is related to. So with that, you can see the changes as highlighted in the ordinance. I would ask for any comments or questions at this time.
Sorry, Chad, I was pulling that document up. Can you clarify that again? So the language that is crossed out was agreed upon by, I apologize. Can you just verify?
Well, just chief's recommendation is the first two sentences.
Okay.
Only, and stopping there, that's a hard stop for the chief in terms of his recommendation. And I neglected to clarify that in the ordinance draft that you have. An earlier version had John Anderson, the city attorney, and I recommending the language that's underlined and or in red.
So we need to decide which language we want tonight. Is that what you're telling us? That
Well, we can have a conversation, and yeah, I mean, you can either, you know, continue the ordinance forward with your suggested changes, or you can send it back to us and have us redraft that paragraph. That's just my oversight.
Well, the second sentence stops at the end of city manager, correct? The proposed?
Yes.
Okay. which is exactly what we were working towards doing.
If I recall, the chief's objections to the kind of language that follows that hard stop after the second sentence, it's a concern that that there be sort of wide, I guess, wide administrative oversight for the chief over police department function, and you know, a desire not to be micromanaged too much. Is that accurate? I mean, I would welcome the chief's comments if that's okay with the mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, that's an accurate summary of the reason that I wanted to kind of narrow down some of that language. That's accurately stated. And I think that in working with John and Chad over the past 2 months on it, that we've gone back and forth. And I was meeting with Chad right before the meeting. That's why he was tied up and not able to start the meeting on time. Is I wanted a better clarification of what those words meant to him, what his interpretation was. And we've gone back and forth. Thank you, John, for your work on this. Chad, thank you for giving me a voice in it. And if you want to pass the ordinance the way it's written today, the way that it is in that Dropbox, after meeting with Chad before the meeting today, I'm fine with that.
Chad, this is for you and the police chief. Oh, sorry. Was someone else?
No, you're good.
Okay, sorry. I commend everyone for getting along and doing it so well, and I think there's really good relations here. Whenever we create a document like this, I'm always thinking forward in terms of we're not looking at the people we're looking at now, but we're looking at future people. Would either of you have concerns for future people as written? Not thinking about how we get along today, but what might happen in the future.
Yeah, I think I can speak for Chad and I on that, and that's the way we've gone at this from the word go. Is this isn't Chief Smutzler and this isn't City Manager Chad. This is what are people going to say further down the road. And I've made that same comment. I don't want the next police chief to come in and go, why did Smutzler screw us over in that way? So I don't think that comes into play. I think with what we've come up with is a pretty fair ordinance.
Well, it was definitely taking the reporting directly to the city manager versus working with the mayor was the main point of doing clarification on this and changing.
I'd move adoption of 1264.
Second.
Moved by Luce, seconded by Hadley. Is that correct?
Johnson, take your pick. Yeah.
Any further discussion?
Thanks. I have two additional points I'd like to just sort of have addressed. The first is, maybe I'm reading this wrong, but I don't see, and again, this is definitely not about current personalities or situations, but I don't see a mechanism by which the chief can be dismissed. Is that an inaccurate reading?
I think the mechanism is, I wanted to look under Q.
Yeah, it's in Q, I believe.
I think it's under Q.
Yeah, could someone point me out the exact language that enables us to?
Well, if you look under the underline part, down to towards the bottom.
The second sentence.
Well, for one thing, it's under subject to civil service provisions, but
Power to employ, reclassify, discipline, suspend, or discharge any employee.
Okay, thank you. My confusion, I think, was just that we deleted police chief in the next sentence, but I now understand what's going on. So yeah, that's not an objection anymore. My second question, maybe it's just a little bit of a concern, is in that underlined sentence. Where do we get that language?
are you talking about?
Yeah. So the first full underlined sentence in the second half of Q, it says the city manager shall not have the authority to discipline the police chief without the approval of both the mayor and a majority vote of a quorum of the council. And my concern is just this. I remember Chief's concern at the public safety meeting here being that he didn't want there to be some sort of ability for the city manager without openness to be able to discipline the chief, that he wanted to make sure that that was an open process. I just wonder if maybe we raised the bar a little bit too high to get to have to get the mayor and the city council on board with a disciplinary procedure for a future chief. I wonder if that puts us in a situation where if you have a bad actor in the future in the police chief department and a mayor who wants to enable that person, should we really allow two people to basically insulate that position from oversight? I wonder if maybe it might be valuable to make that language instead read the city council or the mayor. That is, if the city manager can get either the council or the mayor on board, then there can be a disciplinary process for the chief.
Is the current practice just the mayor and the city manager for discipline for the police chief?
No, it falls squarely on the mayor.
And the mayor.
Okay.
That's why it's.
So in this way, you're giving one out. You're doing the city manager and the mayor.
Mhm.
Right now, we're saying it has to be the city manager, the mayor, and the council. I tend to agree with Steve that that seems like a high bar, and
And again, I don't think this is, a super, it's unlikely to ever come up or be a big deal, but I just feel like in a situation where the city manager can convince 4 council members that there needs to be a disciplinary process, I feel like that should be enough, that the mayor shouldn't have veto power over that.
And Steve, my only comment on that is either pick the mayor or the council. I wouldn't leave the language mayor or the council. So city manager may discipline subject to approval of the quorum of the city council, or subject to that's one version, or version 2, or subject to the approval of the mayor.
what's the opinion of Chad and the police chief on that?
Well, I guess I hadn't really had time to contemplate that, so.
I would think that there's a difference between discipline and dismiss. And the discipline is a lot less needing to have so many levels of decision making.
I guess, we try to insulate the council, if you will, in personnel matters, certainly as far as discipline goes. It does seem maybe irregular to ask the council to engage in discipline of the chief without, maybe it just being the city manager and the mayor, right? I don't know. So with other, Randy asked what we do with other department heads. It's really pretty much up to the city manager. Now there is some language at the top of this section though that says subject to any civil service provisions, right? So, I mean, even if it were the city manager and the mayor, you still have to follow civil service protocol. And there is protocol for that. It's not just on a whim.
There is.
That's why I wonder, given that we have a civil service commission, if it could just be the mayor and the city manager, knowing that the civil service commission is involved, do we need to involve the council?
I would say not for disciplinary reasons, purposes.
Well, I do remember that this language at least was first, maybe not first, because I know y'all have been working this since May, but I know that the chief wanted there to be just a real above board open process for discipline of his office. And I do think that his office, while parallel to other city department heads, is, it's deserving of some sort of special thought about how discipline works, just because of the nature of the trust that we place in our police and the powers that they have in our community. So I guess I don't know how robust the civil service protections are or how that would work out in the real world, but I do wonder if you know, I like the idea that there not be a situation in some distant future where an enabling mayor and can basically insulate a bad chief from any disciplinary procedure.
So currently you have a motion and a second, and you have questions about part of Q.
I mean, I think that overall this is an ordinance worth passing. And if no one else is jumping on board with this concern, then I'll just let it die.
Well, Stephen, I'm not understanding for sure if you're saying there needs to be 3 levels so that a mayor and a police chief who were in cahoots couldn't overwhelm a city manager?
Yeah, no, actually, I think that I'm in favor of my original suggestion that we change the end to or, just because I think that that there needs to be more than just the city manager involved in this for the sake of openness, like the chief requested. But I do think that we should, you know, have a couple different groups that the city manager can appeal to get that necessary authorization if there's going to be a process like that.
Well, by having the mayor and form, then you have more than one group.
As it is right now, you need to get everyone's approval, right? And I don't hear anyone in support of that. So I guess it sounds like people aren't ready to pass this as is. Is that wrong?
Well, I'm still trying to get that you're saying discipline to a police chief isn't possible by the city manager unless there's approval of the mayor or a majority of the council.
The ordinance as currently drafted says the council and the mayor.
It says both and, yeah.
Not both and, you need both plus the city administrator. And,
right.
And my preference would be we make that an or, so that you can get either the mayor or the council to approve of the disciplinary procedure. But I think that it at least shouldn't be both. You should pick one or the other, or maybe either.
I think I agree. The or is the better word there.
I do too.
I'm good with or.
Then I move that we approve. Or I move that we.
Well, you have
see.
just for clarity. So going back to John's point before you get to the mechanics of the motion, John was recommending, your city attorney was recommending that it be without the approval of the mayor. That's one version. Or without the approval of a majority vote of the council. So those are, right, John, if I'm understanding you, you pick one sentence or you pick the other sentence?
That's right. It just seems provides a lot of uncertainty. Who does the city manager? Does the city manager get to kind of weigh the options? And if he reads the city council and thinks, well, this city council isn't going to approve the police chief, I'm going to go talk to the mayor. It's not necessarily wrong. I just see it as creating kind of an awkward situation where you can play favorites. And I think it should be just clear. It just makes it clear for everybody. City manager either can go to the mayor or the city manager can go to the city council. Two different versions. But again, to reiterate, I don't think it's wrong to go with a version that says you can go to either to get their approval. It just creates more ambiguity to me and uncertainty.
Could a mayor and a city manager get into a situation where they discipline the police chief without the council knowing?
Well, formally, and we probably have that situation now with other department heads. But as a matter of professional courtesy in that, I mean, we let you know what's going on, right?
Right, but when you bring it to a quorum of the council
That's a public meeting.
and now HR issues, I think we strike the quorum of the council for disciplinary reasons and, you know, let the civil service, if it gets to the point where we need to suspend or discharge, that would fall under the civil service provisions, correct?
Well, all of it, even disciplinary actions, fall under civil service code. So there's
I
a
say
procedure there to follow.
I say strike the whole majority of the council so we don't get into an HR nightmare, because you know how the rumor mills start with gossip.
Yeah, I feel, Randy, I'm sorry, I can't, were you done? Were you not, I had a hard time hearing you.
I'm recommending we strike the whole sentence that says a majority vote of the council so that we don't get into some HR nightmares, and for whoever our chief of police is, you know, for just a personal courtesy, because we don't do it with any of our other department heads, air this stuff out. If it's just a regular disciplinary action, you know, it's done. We grow from it. If it gets to be so bad, we are involved, because that has happened with some people in this community. But I just don't want to get a bunch of rumors started because somebody's going to, you know, hear it on the news or think they heard it right, and they've heard it from 3 people that were never here, and all of a sudden, you know, there's some bad things being said about our chief, whoever it is. So I think just for that sake, we should just strike the quorum of the council.
And any disciplinary action would have to go through civil service, which is a public hearing anyway, correct? I mean, I wouldn't want us to.
No, I'm not trying to sidestep that, but I'm just saying that it would be easier if we just take that layer totally out and just leave it to the city manager working with the mayor.
No, I'm inclined to agree with you, Randy. I just want to make sure that it's not a hidden transaction, because civil service would be involved, so the public would also know that our police chief was disciplined.
Which is something that, again, I'm sure that the police chief wants, you know, he said that at the last public safety meeting, that he wanted to make sure that there wasn't an opportunity for like a star chamber where, you know, the mayor and the city administrator were disciplining that position without public knowledge. So
right.
I mean, this is not like this is because of that suggestion from the chief.
So then, if just for process clarification, you need to vote on this motion, and that would be the way it would be now. But to change what you're changing, it would have to be brought back again. Is that correct, John?
I think that would be the recommended way with so many changes. If there were some smaller changes, I think you could make a motion to approve it subject to this change. But I think we've talked about a number of things here, and I think it would be best if we brought back a clean draft of the ordinance for the council to vote on.
Okay. So you've got a motion and a second. We've had discussion. Any other?
John, could you clarify for me what changes we all seem to be on board with, except for Randy's suggestion that we remove a majority vote at the quorum of council? It seems like that's the only change to the draft.
That's what I thought too, is that we were just striking the majority vote of a quorum.
Yep.
And we could do that. I was thinking also the draft in the Dropbox has that has the extra language, and that's the language we're going to keep now, correct?
The chief is okay with that language, and we talked about that.
Okay. Well,
But
if that
it's not struck in the Dropbox, it's just underlined, so.
Right.
So we're going to keep that, and then it'll be the city manager shall not have the authority to discipline the police chief without the approval of the mayor, period.
Right.
Right. Can I just accept that as a friendly amendment?
You can, I think we,
Luce moved and Hadley seconded.
Right, we've got a motion and a second as it is.
yes, but A motion that has been made and seconded may be amended during debate. A motion to amend must be seconded and is debatable. So it could be amended. And sorry, I'm referring to the rules because we went over this before.
Sure.
Yeah, just give me direction.
This one gets us every time.
I second the friendly amendment.
Yep.
Okay.
And the friendly amendment is that this part about disciplinary would be by the city manager can't do it without consent of the mayor,
Okay.
period.
And if I could just clarify something as far as removal authority, I mean, that's always going to be subject to civil service appeal or an appeal to the civil service.
And that is council too, according to what I was reading.
I think that would be, since we're looking at this, maybe we should clarify that in there. The city manager shall not have the authority to discipline or remove the police chief without the approval of the mayor? Or do you want that one to be approval of the city council?
I thought that the city manager couldn't remove a department head at all without approval of the city council. We're talking about removal, not discipline.
Right, right. Okay, then I think we can leave that as is, and I think you're back to just the city manager shall not have the authority to discipline the police chief without the approval of the mayor, period. And leave the rest as is.
And that's from the friendly amendment that was just brought forth.
Yep, then I'm fine with it.
Okay, so is everybody clear?
I just want to just make sure I'm hearing it right, and I think I am. I'm the city manager now.
Yep.
When do I get my badge?
Only if you wear a Packers jersey.
Whoa.
I'm still waiting for John Snow to arrive.
Yeah.
Okay, come on now. All right, if there's any further discussion, roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Zittigrun.
Aye.
Motion carried and passed.
Thank you for the good discussion.
Is there any?
And thanks, Chief and Chad, for working together on getting that done.
Yes.
One question. Now this is just the first reading, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
This is the first reading.
Yes.
Is there any, okay, was there any recommendation for waiving? Do you want to?
If people
Bring it-
feel that we worked it through enough, I waive second and third, move to adopt.
I'd like to see the cleaned up copy for a second reading.
Understand.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll wait for it. That would be on February 1st. We would be,
Yeah, we'll talk about bringing it back.
okay, that sounds good. Okay. Let's see. The mayor's report and board and commission appointments. Just a note that the committee assignments will be has been established where Steve Zittigrun will be replacing Johanna Bergen. So I'll just run these through real quick. Mayor Pro Tem is Randy Chisel, Budget Finance, Chisel, Zittigrun, Carlson, Johnson. Community Betterment and Housing, Zittigrun, Hadley, Luce, and Chisel. Economic Development and Property, Luce, Hadley, Johnson, and Neal. Personnel, Negotiating, and Insurance, Johnson and all members. Public Safety, Neal, Zittigrun, Carlson, Hadley. Streets, Alleys, and Sidewalks, Hadley, Neal, Johnson, and Chisel. Water, Sewer, Public Lights and Utility, Carlson, Luce, Zettergruen, and Chisel. These are all noted also on the website if people have any questions. As far as representation for the chamber will continue to be Randy. Economic Development is Chad. Decorah Jobs will be Steve Zittergruen, and I wanted to note to Kurt Johnson that they said that they'd be more than happy to have you on also if you chose to do so. And then Hotel Motel is Randy Chisel and Kurt Johnson. That's for this upcoming year.
I would be happy to stay on Decorah Jobs as well with Steve.
Okay, that'd be great. I appreciate that. Then we have tree board reappointment of Scott Tim, Tina Hall, Brent Parker. We'll do that separate. We'll do these separate, so I'd need a motion.
Luce would move the reappointments to the tree board.
Get a motion by Luce,
Second.
second by Carlson. Any discussion? Roll call.
Luce,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisel, Zittergreen,
Aye.
Hadley,
Okay.
Hadley,
Municipal.
You're muted.
Aye, aye,
Ja-
aye, aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
His hand. Okay. Municipal Electric Utility Task Force, the liaison will be Steve Zittergruen, sorry. I'm looking for a motion and second on that.
I make a motion that we appoint Steve Zittergren to the Municipal Electric Utility Task Force Council Liaison.
I'll second that. Johnson.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Neal,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Zittergreen,
Aye.
Chisel.
No.
MetroNet Board, Chad Bird, primary, and Chopper Albert, alternate. We're looking for.
I'd move to appoint Chad and Chopper to the MetroNet board.
Second that, Johnson.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Hadley,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Carlson, Andy,
We haven't got everybody yet, have we?
Andy Carlson,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Zittergreen.
Aye.
Okay, Planning and Zoning, reappointment of Marla Cloakey.
It's really hard to hear Randy. FYI.
He moved a reappointment to Planning and Zoning of Marla Cloakey.
Second.
Thank you.
Carlson.
Okay, discussion, roll call?
Chisel,
Aye.
Carlson,
Aye.
Luce,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Zittergreen.
Aye.
Okay, Human Rights Commission, reappointment. We've got two with one open seat. Two are Melissa Cook, Rowan Collins.
I'd move those two reappointments to the Human Rights Commission.
I'll second it, Johnson.
Discussion, roll call?
Luce,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Hadley,
Aye.
Zittergreen,
Aye.
Chisel,
Aye.
Neal,
Aye.
Carlson.
Aye.
Okay, I gave the report at the beginning. We have Communities Utility Board. We have one seat open. That gets us down to City Manager. Department heads and council reports.
Department head reports are in your Dropbox, submitted by departments. They're all here in attendance if you have any questions of them. And I don't have anything else to report. I know Wanda will cover, Wanda or Randy, other matters coming up with our budget work session, but that's all I have. Happy New Year.
Wanda?
Okay, just a quick, I don't have the December treasurer's report completed yet. That hasn't been done yet. But just a quick little update on local option tax, hotel motel tax. I went back and compared fiscal 19, 20, and 21 for those different revenue sources. In fiscal 20, so ending June of 20, our local option sales tax was up 1.6%. The estimates for 21 appear to be up 13.6%. Every year in November, we get a reconciliation check. The reconciliation check for fiscal 21 is 145% more than what we received in fiscal year 20. I can't say that I know for sure
Good job, Wanda.
what that's about, but I did call to confirm that it was accurate because I was pretty sure it wasn't, but they tell me it is. But I didn't want to send it back, you know, and record it in the system if it was wrong. But I suspect, and like I said, I'm just suspecting that because of the state change of taxing internet sales, I think it's indicative of how much we are losing to people shopping out of town. And of course now, more people that are not shopping, whereas they might be shopping out of town, we're getting the taxes on it. And we weren't before. Now, is that accurate? I don't know for sure, but.
So just to be clear, the up until June locally collected was up 1 point something. The next fiscal July forward was up 13%, but the state recorded a 145% increase in lost, and that's what you're contributing over and above to internet sales?
No, I'm sorry here. Sorry, I'm going to take my mask off because maybe I'm not being real clear. The first numbers I gave you were what we're expecting in total, and the changes in total, I think, our estimates for fiscal 21. So by the end of June of 21, it's going to be up 13.6% more than it was last year. What I'm saying is our reconciliation check for fiscal 20 that we received in November is 145% more than the reconciliation check was in November of 19.
That gotta be internet.
Oh yeah.
Well,
which is awesome.
That's the only thing I can figure out is that's really what the driving factor is of that. So.
And our awesome shop locally marketing.
Yep. Okay, so your hotel motel tax. So fiscal 20, so the year that ended in June of 20, as compared to fiscal year 19, your first quarter was down 47%. Second quarter was down 3%. Third quarter increased 5%, and the fourth quarter was down 0.5%. And so far in fiscal 21, so our April through June of 20 is down 55% from fiscal 19. And the third quarter, which is July through September, is down 27%. So there's a significant difference and a significant impact to your hotel motel tax.
Hey, Wanda, could you send an email or something with that listed out specifically where I could look at that?
Yeah, I can if you'd like me to.
Yeah, that's great.
And road use tax. Road use tax was down just slightly in fiscal year 20. From fiscal year 19, it was only down like $5,000. So it's just very, very insignificant amount. And to date, for these last 6 months from July through December, I think we're going to be up about 200,000 if that trend stays the same as it has been the last few years. So it
Wanda,
is up a little bit.
When is the RUT is based on census, correct?
RUT is based on census.
And when do they certify the new census?
I have not gotten any information on that. But I do believe it will not start till July, so it won't affect us this year.
Okay.
The change in population won't take, and in that population factor won't take effect till July 1st. So it'll be in effect for fiscal 22.
Do we have any preview on that at all?
As to what the population is going to be?
Yeah.
Just my best guesstimate, and I do believe we're going to lose population. And I have.
Yeah, do you have a rough idea how much?
I'm guessing 600 people.
If they certify it. Maybe they won't certify it.
And do you know of course you know, what is the formula for RUT with population?
It's a dollar amount per capita, and I don't have that information right in front of me, but the state tells you what they believe is their recommended amount each year. The league always tells you budget that conservatively. So I have budgeted 50 cents less per capita than what the state says it's going to be, just based on what the league advises us to do, and I've always done that. And that's worked out actually pretty well for us. And really, it's better to be conservative with that than overly, aggressive.
And there's no word on the long promised backfill.
Well, there is no word, but then it's just their session is just getting started, so I don't know what'll happen with that, with our backfill this year, if they'll start phasing it out or what they'll do with that backfill.
Okay, thank you.
Right now it's in the budget, so we'll see what happens.
Wanda, a quick question. When you talked about hotel motel, you gave us some percentages. Could you give us some dollar amounts?
I can. Okay, so I've got them all here, but do you want me to just send it to you?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, if you would
asked for that, so I can just send it to you. It'd be easier than you trying to write it down.
And if you're listing it out, maybe you could just list out the other ones that you gave in your report. I think it'd be valuable to have those, the loss, the hotel motel and the road use tax and such. That would be beneficial to be able to look at that.
Okay, I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah,
and then, just very briefly, one more thing. Our payroll clerk, Paulette Daggett, submitted her 2-week resignation today. So we will be having to go through that process of looking for a new payroll clerk.
Yeah, she's been very valuable, and she was offered something close to home, which is understandable considering her family.
Yep. She took a position that's 3 miles from her house, and she's been driving here from Lawler, so that's a big commute every day.
Yeah.
And she's been doing that for 2.5 years, but she took a position, like I said, 3 miles from her home.
Well, and she was very instrumental in working with getting things computerized as far as payroll was concerned too. There was, she was a valuable employee. Okay, anything else?
Not for me.
All right. I don't think we have anything else from any of the department heads. So why don't we go around to the council? Let's do Kurt Johnson.
Nothing, Mayor.
Okay, Emily?
I had a listening session right after our last council meeting that Tuesday. Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I had about 17 people there from the city, and I think a fair amount were not Ward 2, but some were Ward 2. It was great. Other council members who joined me, thank you so much. It was great to hear from them. I felt really good about it. It's something when I got elected that I was hoping to do on a more regular basis, but then COVID happened, so I think I'll continue it. But it got me thinking about the undue hardship that places on Chad, because bless his heart, he was there, which is good. And I do want to think about, as we bring our new zoning, our building code administrator on board, maybe is there a way that we can help alleviate Chad having to go to every meeting? I sent the suggestion that if he's going to do the MEU committee, do we need him at the MEU and the Sustainability Commission? Could maybe Jeremy Brill do one? And I don't know how that works, and I appreciate Chad's workaholic attitude, but I also want to honor his time too and figure out how can we either replicate him or think about the meetings, because I want him at all my listening sessions. That's the #1 priority, and I just want to make sure he's got time to do that.
And I think when we discussed too with the code compliance officer, what type of duties can that person be working with too. So hopefully there'll be some alterations that will allow him not to have to work 48/7 instead of 27.
I hope you're hearing this, Chad.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I
else?
stepped out of the room for a minute. Could you repeat? No, thank you.
I
Well,
also really want to reiterate to Wanda how much I appreciate your minutes, and that my comments were not directed at you, but in minute taking. So I do want to reiterate that, because I would not want to come across that way at all. I appreciate all that you do and hearing all the work that you do with the budget as well. Other than that, Happy New Year, everybody. Stay safe.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Steve Z.
Just quickly, I was excited to see in the police chief's report that there were so many applications for the new position. That's good to see. And add something else, but it's not that important because I can't remember it. Thanks.
Well, I'll come back in case you remember.
Oh, I do now. I just gotten people must have figured out my phone number and email address, because I've gotten a lot more constituent mail since the previous meeting than I had prior to that. So thanks to everyone who's reached out to me, and I always welcome communication from people. It's been informative and insightful. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Andy Carlson.
Nothing at this time, Mayor. Just Happy New Year to everybody.
Ross Hadley.
No, nothing, Mayor, other than just make sure you continue to wear your mask and socially distance, and use your hand sanitizer. The new strain of COVID is in the United States, and even though the vaccine is coming, let's just make sure we all do our part to keep the community healthy.
Thanks, Ross. Steve Luce.
Yes, getting to the bottom of the agenda and the talking about the next meeting date reminded me of an item in the council procedures that I was hoping we could talk about, but I forgot about it at the time. And that was if a meeting is scheduled on a holiday, that then it'd be scheduled for it's item 2 under meetings, number D, that it, instead of saying it would be the next meeting, I would like us to consider lots of Tuesdays are election activities involved, so that we change it to read, it would be the next day unless that Tuesday happens to have election activities occurring.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think last year we ran into that problem. Didn't we have a meeting on an election night?
It has
The primary, I think.
It has come up in previous.
Yeah.
As well. So.
Other than that, I shared at church on Sunday that I encouraged everyone to consider 2021 the year of the mask, that it's very possible that our public health needs will go all the way through the year in terms of being safe in public, so that we not get impatient and think it's going to be done as soon as 20 more people get vaccinated. There's a big number that we have to reach in terms of vaccinations before we can wash our hands of the whole thing.
Okay.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Randy.
Well, I just want to remind everyone of the meeting on Tuesday, January 19th, starting at 4 o'clock for the budget. And again, I would reiterate, it would be best if we can all be here. We've come up with a plan to keep everybody socially distanced in this room. I've run it by the Public Health Office, and they agree that it's a good plan that we have. Communication is just so much easier when we are face-to-face here, as far as hearing and seeing. Please bring your own water bottles. Bring a snack if you want, because we're not going to order food in for this one. Budget books are being worked on.
I have work duties that night until 6:30, so I'll have to come late.
I have a question about that. And I'd actually welcome discussion. So, Randy, I totally love us being face to face, and I would really welcome that. What I have found, which I'm curious how other people feel, is that when you sit in council chambers, I can't see you. So if it's a public meeting and we have people on Zoom watching us, it's actually really hard for people to hear and see us when we're in chambers in a way that it's not when we're on Zoom. You know, we'll be masked in chambers. We have to limit the number of people there. So I want so badly to sit in a room with all of you, but I also want to be cognizant of what is best for public transparency at our budget meeting, and whether that is Zoom.
One of the things that we've worked with Chopper is that anybody that wants to see, we're going to have a television screen and seating out in the hallway for individuals who want to be able to see it as well. That's one thing they're working on. That may not cover everything that you just said, which would mean that the people, really the only people that would be in the room would be the council and department heads. And some of the, yeah, I believe so.
Oh, we can change the zoom on the camera too.
I'd love to hear from people who are, who come to our meetings. I mean, I don't know. Again, one of the reasons I zoom in is when I went to council meetings, it was really hard to see people, you know what I'm saying, who are virtual, who may be immune compromised. I don't know. I guess there's a part of me that thinks Zoom is actually our better access to our faces and our talking, but.
Well, I think, you know, one of the things too is that it's a council, it's a public meeting, it's council work session, which is dealing with the complexities of the budget. And I know that whenever we've had that in the past, even though it was a public meeting, there was never anybody that attended it other than a news person and one other person. But to be able to go through the book and to be able to ask the questions of importance that we have as far as being able to do that in person, I think And then also providing for those who really want to be able to hear that or see that, and providing an alternative where they could be located and be able to see it via the television outside of the chambers room.
Mayor, this is Chad. Maybe one alternative is our camera does have the ability to pan and zoom.
That's right.
And it might be an option that we engage somebody to operate the camera that night and pan it to the council people or the council person that's speaking, zoom in on them or something like that. I mean, we certainly have that ability. We just don't, right, have that person staff that camera, but that camera has all those kind of mobilities, so maybe we do that.
And is that done via the laptop?
No, there's a joystick and a control console right at the module there.
Okay, yeah, that would be, I think that would be really good to have somebody there that would work with that.
Nintendo
And
based.
each council member will have their own mic.
Well, actually, Chopper and I were talking about that just before the meeting started tonight. We're working through the microphone piece. But we think we could set the room up so that you'd be able to hear the entire room through a microphone. And then if somebody panned or zoomed the camera, we think that would work. The sound would be probably the biggest piece that we need to work on, but we'd already talked about maybe trying to do that Thursday or Friday of this week in a test session. So.
Okay, because really I struggle to hear Randy when he talks and wanted to.
Okay, anything else, Randy?
Nope, that's all I have.
Okay. I don't have much. I did talk to Chad a bit. I'd like to be able to at least put forth the idea of including, whether it is included in the budget or not, city council members being paid for work sessions. I know that there's a process of being able to do that, but I want to make sure that I get it on the docket we're looking at budget wise, since we've been meeting regularly as at work sessions. So that's something to at least know what financially that would be. But I think beyond that, I don't think I have anything else.
And I would move to adjourn.
Okay, so moved. Thank you very much for the discussion. It's been a good discussion tonight.